We have another beautiful day outside. Beautiful day to be beautiful yourself. Isn't that great? Is there anybody here from another Unity? Anybody here for the first time? Okay. Well, we have a little different program for us here at the second service. I'm going to be doing a dialogue with Andy Lenec, who's Ukraine, and he shared some time with me on Friday discussing the situation in Ukraine. And I think it'll be very interesting as we discuss what's going on over there. I know most people are thinking about it, and some people are very, very concerned about it. I hope everybody's at least a little bit concerned about what's taking place now in that area of the world. So this morning, I could lead a prayer, but I really only have one prayer. Just take a moment with me to bring to mind, let the power of the presence establish peace in Ukraine for the country, for the people, peace between Russia and Ukraine. And so it is. Amen. And now we have the opportunity to listen to Marcy, if she's still here.
Let's do a couple announcements real quick.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
Oh, yeah. There you go. Good morning. What is a good spiritual skill is to be able to be flexible, you know, land on your feet. All right. So this morning, I want to start off by saying that we have started a new system where we need snacks for after our service. So we're asking people whose last names start with A to E if you could bring snacks to either the 9 or 11 o'clock service. That would be great. And so next month in June, it will be F to J. We're also accepting food, a food drive. Please bring non-perishable, easy meal items that can be opened without a can opener. This goes for our homeless brothers and sisters and families in need. And then also, the Unity prayer team, they practice affirmative prayer and meditation together as a group twice a month, and with those who need prayer after the service. And we are ramping up our team, and we are open to new members. So if you are interested in learning the art of affirmative prayer, helping others, we'd like you to make a spiritual commitment to serving as a member of the prayer ministry. If that does interest you, you can come to the office and let Heather know, and we'll get you in touch with the team. We also have our healing circle. This circle gathers this Tuesday, next Tuesday, 6 p.m., and every second Tuesday of the month. It's drop-in. It's a safe environment to share and get the support you need if you are experiencing grief. Coming on May 20th, we have that workshop with Dr. Charlie Cropley. It's his naturopathic self-exam workshop. This is an opportunity to just be extra kind and caring to your body and transform your understanding and your relationship with your body. We also have that concert coming up with Alethea Rising with our members Dinah Snow and Sierra Sandwell. I've been to a few of their concerts, and I can tell you it's not something you want to miss. Lastly, I am putting on that workshop called The Art of Quantum Living. It's a fancy name, but it's not a fancy class. It's a proven, practical training that will transform your life. If you want to eliminate those triggers in your life, if you want to change the stories that run your life, then this workshop is it. I'm actually going to be in the fellowship hall after there, and if you have any questions or want more information, so please come by and get the snacks, and then come by and say hello. And now, if we have our musician here, I'd like to invite to the stage Marcy. Please help me welcome.
Thank you. Good morning. I've been gone for a month. It's so good to be back with you all. Happy Mother's Day. Kind friends all gather round. There's something I would say, but what brings us together here has blessed us all today. Love has made a circle that holds us all inside, where strangers are as family and loneliness can't hide. You must give yourself to love, if love is what you're after. Open up your hearts to the tears and laughter and give yourself to love. Give yourself to love. I've walked these mountains in the rain and learned to love the wind. I've been up before the sunrise to watch the day begin. I've always knew I'd find you, though I never did know how. But like sunshine on a cloudy day, stand before me now. You must give yourself to love, if love is what you're after. Open up your hearts to the tears and laughter and give yourself to love. Give yourself to love. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcy. This is Andy Lenec. He's our guest today, who's going to be sharing some insights from the Ukraine perspective And I'd just like to start by saying to everyone, maybe you can say this in Ukraine too. I want to say to everybody, Happy Mother's Day. All you mothers. And all you fellas out there, call your mom today, or if she's still here on the planet, give her a call, send her a prayer.
So in Ukrainian, this is kind of tricky. Vesely Dень Materi. But I'll tell you what, I'll give you another Ukrainian lesson instead. You can say this one. It's 6 letters. Privit. P-R-Y-V-I-T. Privit. That means hello. So privit, everybody.
Okay.
We'll start there, and then we'll work our way up to Happy Mother's Day.
All right, good. So give us a little background on, you were born in this country.
Yeah. So if I could, please, I want to read something, because this came across my desk a couple of months ago, and it just epitomized how I want to live my life. So this is the gold standard. I surrender myself to God without any conditions or reservations. I shall not bargain with God. I shall not make my surrender piecemeal, but I shall lay bare the very center of me, that all of my very being shall be charged with the creative energy of God. Little by little, or vast area by vast area, my life must be transmuted in the life of God. As this happens, I come into the meaning of true freedom, and the burdens that I seemed unable to bear are floated in the current of the life and love of God. The central element in communion with God is the act of self-surrender. That was written by a fellow by the name of Howard Thurman, who was born in 1900. And I saw this before the war started. So let's call that the gold standard. That's what I aspire to. Backing up a little bit, my parents were political refugees. They were escaping communism and came from Ukraine to the United States in 1950. I was born in 1953. Okay, now you can figure out how old I am. And because my parents were political refugees and were escaping communism, they actually thought that someday communism would be vanquished and they would be able to return to Ukraine. And unlike many other refugee groups, they did not try to assimilate. So we spoke Ukrainian in the house. It was actually my very first language. I went to a Ukrainian school on Saturdays. I went to a Ukrainian church on Sundays. And I went to Ukrainian camps in the summertime. So it was kind of pushed on me, and I resented it a little bit as I was growing up. I really very much appreciate it now because I was really brought up biculturally and was fluent in the language from a very, very early age. Moving forward a little bit, when I was 17 in 1971, I went to visit Ukraine for the first time. Ukraine still was very much behind the Iron Curtain. And here I was with hair down on my shoulders and, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And my mother said, you better cut that hair before you go to Ukraine. And I'm like, why would I want to do that? But I did. And my first experience, we flew into Moscow at the time, that I was held at customs for 3 hours. And my suitcase was completely torn apart. My socks were unrolled. Everything was looked at. And I was confused. I was just absolutely confused. Here is tyranny. Here is something out of Fahrenheit 451. And meanwhile, there I was back in the United States demonstrating against Nixon and the Vietnam War. So it's like, what is right here? Moving forward a little bit more, I visited Ukraine a couple more times. And then in 2015, I was listening to NPR, and they were interviewing the oldest active Peace Corps volunteer, a woman by the name of Alice Carter, who at 87 was finishing her second year in the Peace Corps in Morocco. And I had retired a little bit on the early side. I had sort of kept in touch with Ukraine and Ukrainian life. I actually raised my children. My daughter speaks Ukrainian and did a lot of Ukrainian dance. And I had this crazy idea, well, why don't I join the Peace Corps? They had just changed the rules where you could request your country of service. And I was sitting with my son at the time, and I said, you know, Drew, I have something left to give. I've always been a volunteer. And he said, go for it, Dad. So I sat down at the computer and started filling out the application. It was actually pretty complicated, and about 24 hours later, I hit send, and the first thought that crossed my mind is, what have you done? And I had applied for Ukraine and was accepted to Ukraine. And I wanted to work with kids, which ultimately happened, but the position that I was given in Ukraine was in community development. So here I am in my 60s visiting the land of my parents, and I knew on some level that I was also working out some ancestral karma. I was just trying to figure out why Ukrainians are Ukrainians. Why do they have certain cultural traits? And what happened is I thought I was fluent. I was fairly fluent, but I realized that I could really speak a little bit better. And in the course of 2 years, I was actually assigned to Western Ukraine where nobody spoke English, and my Ukrainian got pretty good. I also met relatives that I never knew I had. I had somebody called me once and said, I'd like to meet you by this statue at noon. And, you know, I showed up, and I'm like, okay, I've been posting a lot of politically sensitive topics, and I wonder if the KGB is just going to sweep me off my feet and take me to some building somewhere. But instead, a big gentleman comes up and hugs me and says to me in Ukrainian, we're family. My grandfather and your grandfather were brothers. So, and then it turns out that there were some other second cousins, and because I had the language, Peace Corps in Ukraine it's the largest country, has the most volunteers of any country where the Peace Corps served pre-COVID. There were well over 300 volunteers and a lot of Ukrainian national staff, and they saw me as, I don't know why, but sort of this returning heroic guy whose parents had emigrated, and he came back and wanted to serve in Ukraine. So I was able to make a lot of really, really wonderful friendships. And fast forward to the future, you know, I came back from Ukraine. It was an unbelievable experience. And I have probably more friends in Ukraine than I do in the United States, really good friends and family that I've discovered. And these are people that I lived with and laughed, and we ate together and worked together, and I fell in love with them. And I also fell in love with the country. You know, it's something that I didn't really appreciate when I was younger. I didn't really feel Ukrainian, but I didn't really feel American either, you know, being born biculturally. And something in my heart was lit on fire. You know, a love of that country, a love of their culture, a love of their hospitality, a love of their peacefulness. And on the surface, I'll tell you, Ukrainians, and I think this is a cultural aspect of living under Soviet rule since 1917, they don't smile on the street. You know, you get on a bus and you see a lot of mean faces, and you'd think like, wow, you know, these people are really unhappy. But when you break through that, there's this beautiful heart in Ukraine and in Ukrainians. Something that we all share. I mean, we all have that in common, and I think that's what our job is, to try to find that. So here I am feeling again a little bit displaced, and I started an English club, a Zoom English club, before the war, just because one of the things that I used to do in Ukraine is I'd get people together of all ages and we would practice English. A lot of people there speak English, a lot of people want to speak English. It's kind of the lingua franca of commerce. And I was meeting on a weekly basis on Zoom with these beautiful people, and we would discuss silly things. You know, if you had a superpower, what would you want it to be? If you could go anywhere in the world, for 24 hours, where would you want it? Where would you go? And then 3 months ago, as we're listening to the news, and more you see this buildup of Soviet troops. And this war has been fought in the media. It's pretty amazing. And I'm watching these buildups every day on TV news, and I'm starting to freak out. And I'm asking my friends, like, are you worried about this? And they're like, no, we're fine, you know, that's not going to happen, and we have a strong army, and on and on. And then the week before, they're starting to get a little nervous. And then the tanks rolled, and I was just in shock. And I don't know whether I was naive, because it's 2022. We're supposed to be evolving as a civilization, and tanks are rolling across the border into the land of my ancestors. And then the stories started of these horrendous bombings. And many of us, myself included, thought that, well, with this huge Russian army, they're just going to roll right over Ukraine. They're going to capture the capital, and there'll be a puppet regime installed, and the war will be over in a little while. And little did anybody know that, I heard a college professor say that Putin accomplished what Ukraine couldn't accomplish for itself in the last 70 years, and that's unite the country. So you see these people from all different walks of life banding together to protect their sovereignty, to protect their nation. Religion didn't matter. Age didn't matter. There were pensioners taking their checks and bringing food out to people. Massive internal displacement. In Ukraine, there is a term called IDPs, internally displaced people. And prior to this current war, you have to realize that the shooting actually started in 2014, after what was called the Revolution of Dignity, when they threw out the last puppet dictator, a man named Yanukovych. So they're kind of used to the shooting, they're kind of used to the suffering, and most of the shooting was in the East. And now all of a sudden the entire country is drawn into this conflict and is showing the world just an amazing spirit, an amazing resilience, a will to be free, a will to have self-determination, and the ability to work together and come together and help each other. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing in the context of this horrendous set of circumstances. So I'm telling you all this, and Jack, I'm sorry I'm going on so long, but to give you some context, that this is the gold standard. I surrender myself to God, and I want to live according to all of these great things, these principles that we learn our entire lives, or certainly when we embark on a spiritual journey, we learn we must love each other. We must see the God in each other. And here I am having this gut reaction, fear, rage, helplessness. And part of me is saying, but the gold standard. And it's been a struggle. You know, it's been a real struggle for the last almost 10 weeks to try to reconcile what I feel for Ukraine, for the land of my ancestors and the land of my friends who are suffering. Most of them are in the West, but I had two friends in Chernihiv in northeast Ukraine where we lived for 3 months. And that city of 1 million people, one of the oldest cities in Europe, is over 50% destroyed, gone. No hospitals left, apartment buildings shattered, no infrastructure, no electricity, no water. And after about a month, I finally heard from both of them, and I had this feeling for the first time in my life, thank God you're alive. Thank you, God, that Denis and Andrei were spared. And we've since stayed in touch, but again, it's just been a real struggle to try to reconcile what I feel on a gut level, on that human level, the outrage, with how I want to feel towards all humanity. And then to take a look at this event in global terms. I mean, the world is pretty screwed up today. If you look at everything that is going on and how we as a civilization have undermined the world. And that's why we have global warming. That may be one of the reasons why we have a pandemic going on. And now this war, which brings us as close to World War III as we have been since probably the Cuban Missile Crisis. And you look and you have to think, like, this is an apocalyptic time for all of us. You know, what is the good? Is there some good behind all of this violence? All of this death, this rape, this torture, this destruction, this evil. And I'm looking and I'm going, okay, I think what I'm seeing is the release of pure evil. You know, that Vladimir Putin and his henchmen and the soldiers who have been given the freedom to go and rape and kill civilians. That's evil. Why is that happening now? Lots of questions and that have led me to some real soul searching, and so I'm going to pause for now. But this is one of the things that Jack and I were talking about. You know, how in the midst of all of this destruction, this evil, this suffering, where is God? You know, like, where's Waldo? Where is God? And I'll touch on that a little bit, but I want to turn it back to Jack because I'm hogging the microphone here.
No, that's okay. You're here as the guest because you have the information on a personal level that we don't have. We get news reports, we get television programs, we get that, but we don't get the insights that you have, that you're sharing, because you're still in contact with people in Ukraine.
Every day. Yeah, I mean, literally from the first day that the tanks rolled, I've been in touch with my friends and family every single day. And one of the ways that I've made myself useful is to raise money for different organizations. And I've raised money and sent things like USB chargers to regional defense units. I've sent individual money to people that have lost their homes and have been bombed out of their cities. I've helped individuals that were running around trying to find medicines and get them to people in Kyiv, when Kyiv, the capital, was under siege. And you know, the stories that I've heard, I mean, there were senior citizens, people that would line up in front of drugstores, and they needed insulin and they needed other medications literally to stay alive. And the air raid sirens would go off and they wouldn't leave the line. They're like, you know, I'm either going to die from lack of my medications or I'm going to die from a bomb falling on me. What's the difference? Also, you know, on a daily basis, and I was greeted this morning with a video of, it's on the news now, but there was a school in eastern Ukraine where 100 people were sheltering as a bomb shelter. And a Russian bomb, missiles hit it. And 30 people escaped. They're still looking for 60 people under the rubble. So these are images, and I'll tell you right now, what you've seen on TV is understated. The amount of destruction, the amount of violence, the amount of just absolute cruelty is beyond the imagination. And so this is one of the other things that has been taking its toll on me psychologically and emotionally. But I can't show that. I mean, you know, there's no bombs falling on Broomfield, and I haven't heard an air raid siren, and I have to be strong for my friends in Ukraine. And it you know, from an empathetic perspective, as I speak to them every single day, I just see that how tired they're getting. Their resolve is phenomenal. From the very beginning, they're like, we will win this war. We will win this war, you know. And I'm convinced, as we're watching on a global level, you know, this power politics. A lot of people say to me, why hasn't the United States supported Ukraine from the very beginning? It's a great question. And I look and, from a moral perspective, I think that they should have, they could have. But now, after, 6 weeks of just unbelievable destruction and unbelievable resolve, and Ukrainians actually taking back some of their territory and beating the Russians, maybe it's possible that the West has decided, well, let's get in on this now. Now we can back this horse, because this horse has a chance to win the race. And so now weapons are flowing in from 40 different countries. Javelin missiles, intelligence is flowing in, tanks, drones, and Ukraine is starting to turn the tide of the war. They've sunk 2 ships already. They have killed a number of generals. They've destroyed a number of tanks that were supposedly indestructible. And I say this is from the level of Andy, the Ukrainian American, who's lived there, whose friends are suffering. But am I happy that this violence is continuing? No. I had someone come up to me a couple of days ago and almost start berating me, like, should Ukraine be fighting this war? The Quakers say that there should be nonviolence, and I'm thinking, well, show me a country that's run by Quakers where there's nonviolence, and does Ukraine have a right to defend itself? And, nonviolence is a wonderful thing. Love is a wonderful thing. But we're playing at this low vibrational level, and there's a fellow by the name of Father Richard Rohr, who is a progressive, pretty left-leaning Catholic priest, and he just wrote a very interesting essay about violence and evil. And he says that there's a spiral of violence, and that the first violence happens, it's called the world, what he calls the world, or structural violence, structural evil. And that's when we overlook evil acts by our government. Think of what happens in inner cities where people don't have enough food, or don't have educational opportunities, or in the workplace where people are discriminated against. We become used to that, and that's evil. It's latent evil, but it's evil. And when we accept that, then we go on, and his second sphere is sins of the flesh, which is mostly sexual, and I'm going to skip right over that. That's, the Catholics have enough guilt about that. And then the third level is that institutionalized evil that we're seeing now, where a government says we are doing this because we are saving Ukraine from itself, from neo-Nazis, from genocide. And so they spin these narratives, just like this country has done and other countries have done. They spin these narratives to justify and rationalize these massive acts of violence. So, and what Father Rohr says, like, if you don't take care of the baseline level here, if you don't call people on their SHIT, when they're doing this stuff, then it tends to spiral, and we get to this place where it's like, yeah, we have to send in tanks. We have to invade Afghanistan. We have to invade Syria. We have to do this in South America because, for the greater good, because we're protecting freedom. Freedom for what? To die? And I, as I'm looking, I see this like institutionalized evil, and this is kind of what helps me to get back to that spiritual perspective. That we've all accepted these things, and we think like we can't do anything about it. Well, that's just the system, and I can't do anything about the schools, and I can't do anything about discrimination, and I can't do anything about global warming, and I can't do anything about gender bias. And that's the illusion, because we may not be able to do it on a systemic level, but we can on an individual level. And that's the tie back to that gold standard. What am I doing as a human being? How am I treating people? What am I doing to try to surrender myself to God? And I don't worry about my neighbors, and I don't worry about what's going on. I mean, I do the right thing because we all have roles to play in this life. You know, the Hindus call it Maya, the delusion of what we're supposed to do. And we have roles, you know. I have the role of the Peace Corps volunteer, and Jack has the role of the minister, and you all have your roles as well. And we play this out in this social structure that we inhabit here in the United States on this planet. And above that is, okay, what am I when I take off this Ukrainian shirt, when Jack takes off his beautiful ministerial cloth, you know? We're children of God. And this is what we need to recognize, and this is what Jack speaks about so beautifully, you know, that mystical peace. We can't forget that. So even as we're walking around or driving around or doing our things or teaching or working, you know, on the streets and construction, whatever, that's our role. We cannot forget that connection that we have to the divine. A long time ago in the Bhagavad Gita, there was a war, and there was a fellow by the name of Arjuna, and he was a pacifist, and there was a war that was about to be fought within his family, Kurukshetra, and Krishna said to him, "You must fight this war. This is a just war." And I know Jack and I have, you know, talked about this, that it's a metaphor, and it's about a karmic situation. But even in this holy text, you know, there are times when we need to take up arms, when we need to defend other people. Tough situation, you know, tough situation to be put in. You know, do I pick up that rifle? You know, when Jack and I had that beautiful conversation on Friday, we surmised, like, and think about this, you know, if you were able to kill Putin, could you do it? If you were able to go back in time and kill Hitler, could you do it? And you know, on one level you think, oh yeah, it wouldn't be a problem at all. But in my heart, I hope that I can't. I hope that I can't take a human life, even if it were expected of me. So we operate on this level, and I think this is, you know, again, if I think about what good might come of this conflict, well, there's a couple of things. One, that Ukrainians, just through their spirit, are showing the world what a united country can look like. That regardless of your age, your religion, your gender, your race, although Ukraine is mostly a white country, for the right cause, we can come together and help each other. Again, I hear these stories of people going into their closets and taking all their clothes out, stuff that they weren't going to get rid of, bringing it out to the school in their village and laying it out, because all these people who've lost their homes, left with nothing, need clothing. They need food. So it's like, yeah, of course, here, take this. I don't need it. So you got this beautiful generosity that is going on. It's an example to the world of what could happen. And then the other, you know, we are supposed to be evolving as a civilization, as a species, going from the Iron Age into the Golden Age, from the Kali Yuga into the Bhakti Yuga. And it's written in many of the old texts, the spiritual texts, that before that happens, we go through dark times. You know, these eras, these yugas can be 5,000 to 8,000 years, and it's always darkest before the dawn. So we're seeing these horrible things happening in the world. And I'm just thinking, I didn't think I would live to see it. Maybe I will. That beyond this, maybe that, you know, the light will start to shine back on the earth. Because I see people coming to me, you know, they hear I'm Ukrainian, and I'll do a radio show or something, and people will come up and hug me and start crying. because we feel that collective sorrow. We feel that collective angst. On a collective level, it's abhorrent that we're watching this evil. I can't take it. I just can't take anymore. And maybe that's what we need. It's unfortunate that Ukraine is the catalyst for this. I mean, Ukraine is just absolutely taking it on the chin. But if we as a civilization wake up, if we say we can't take this suffering anymore, we cannot allow this to continue, we cannot treat each other like this, we have to get back to what our hearts know to be true, then maybe that's the good that is coming out of this. I mean, I can only hope and pray. I can only hope and pray, because something has got to change on this planet. We've got to respect each other more. We've got to respect this planet more. We've got to respect all civilizations more, and all races, and all religions and creeds, and come back to what we know to be true. That gold standard, I surrender myself to God. We've forgotten that. And I think that right now what's happening in Ukraine and how the world responds, not just militarily or from a humanitarian aid, but how we respond as individuals, as a nation, as a planet of 7 billion individuals, or whatever the number is. Our history is being written right now. And we're at a crossroads, and a lot of suffering. It's certainly dark. Maybe that dawn is right around the corner. I hope so. But all of us, everyone sitting in this room, we have the option of checking ourselves and saying, what am I doing? Am I a net negative, or am I a net positive? Am I in touch with the goodness in my heart? Am I seeking that mystical peace? Am I helping people? Because in Ukraine, it's interesting. We give them a lot of aid, and there's a lot of money that's being collected. And what I'm realizing now, it's become so apparent in the last couple of weeks, they need kind words. They need validation. They need empathy. They need to be heard. It was a couple weeks ago, someone said to me on a Zoom call, don't let them forget about us. And our news cycles here, Ukraine was the head of the news for 2 months, and now it's second page, and there's a paragraph like war in Ukraine, daily updates. And so they're afraid that they will get lost in the shuffle, and that we will forget about them, and the powers that be will divvy up the country. But it's a nation of individuals, and these are the thoughts and the actions that we have to keep in our consciousness. That we are a planet of individuals that make up a number of different societies and cultures, but we all share one thing, and that's our origin in God. And we have to find that. We have to really find what makes us the same, rather than continuing to concentrate on what makes us different.
That is exactly what the Unity movement was founded on. Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, they got together. She had suffered from an illness for a couple of years. She was told that she's not going to survive, but she survived. When she got a hold of this thought, I am a child of God, I do not inherit disease. I'm only bringing this up because the necessity for faith to lead to a stronger belief in the fact that we can become people of divine inspiration and experience that in our lives. But Charles Fillmore as well. And then when he realized his wife was healed, he asked the question, what's at the heart of all the major religions that they agree upon, not what they disagree upon? So that's how Unity was born, on the whole idea that we acknowledge that at the heart of every major religion, of course there's some peripheral religions that are not aboard, they're operating from a totally insane perspective. But the major religions of the world all agree upon the central ideal that we are all interconnected. We're a family of beings who are all interconnected. And when we begin to embrace that, as Unity does all the time, this is what we're about embracing, the oneness of all life. Because if the oneness of all life is God expressing, then all life is sacred at the core, at the very core. Now, there are so many that are not expressing that. That happens to be, what's going on in the outer-directed, illusion-driven, war-ridden world. But when we finally get enough people agreeing within their own personal lives to share in such a way as you were sharing about the gold standard, I'm surrendered to God, then you're surrendered to harmony. You're surrendered to bestowing peace. You're surrendered to healing. You're surrendered to unconditional consideration, compassion. That's what you're surrendered to. And this is what the training is all about. We've got to be able to see ourselves when we're in violation of that. That's when we're in, self-betrayal or in betrayal of the truth, which is that we are all interconnected. It's unfortunate that so many are so unconscious at this point and still operating from that illusionary definition of life, that I'm a separate body-mind in a world of separate others, and my self-interest doesn't necessarily have anything to do with anybody else's.
Absolutely, and what I was saying before about what Father Richard Rohr wrote, when he talks about institutionalized or structural evil. Well, think about it. We've all been conned. We've been conned to think that we need new clothes every year, that we need the latest television, that we need the latest iPhone. And so we're all, as a culture, we're in this rat race. And we've forgotten. We think that, if I have this phone, this car, this vacation, whatever, I will be happy. And we've forgotten the joy that comes from generosity. The joy that comes from sharing, the joy that comes from holding your hand out and lifting up your brother or your sister. These things we know in our heart. We absolutely know them. We've just forgotten. And that's what we need to come back to. That beautiful human consciousness, that God consciousness that every single one of us has. And I think that the only way things will change really is one soul at a time. One soul at a time. Help your sister, help your brother, help people, be generous of spirit, and rediscover. Because we don't need to be, we don't need to learn these things. Our hearts will tell us. I think it was Sigmund Freud that said, the little stuff, listen to your mind. The really important stuff, listen to your heart. So we need to remember how to listen to our hearts, which will never lie to us. And treat each other accordingly and follow the beautiful teachings of unity, or if you're somewhere else, all the teachings are the same. They all teach the same thing. And extrapolate, because I think that the major religions have really gone off track here in the United States, and the fundamentalists and the politicization of faith is. You talk about institutional structural sin. That's a sin. But the teachings are the same. And it's great that you come out here, that we practice together, that we sing together, that we worship together, and remind each other of what is truly beautiful and right and just in our lives.
Well, it comes down to something that I think that we were born into that is very difficult to ignore is the fact that most of us in this Western culture were raised with the idea that there are authority figures that know better than our hearts, our inner core. We say, well, we follow them. And that's why you get all of this institutionalized evil that is taking place, is because we've bought into the whole idea that these people know exactly what we need to do. And so we're following a particular ideal, a paradigm that is going to fail even more miserably unless we change the tide of our thinking and feeling. So that we have to learn to check in. We have to learn when we have negative emotions rising, and we have blame arising, and we have temptation arising within us to step beyond the golden rule, to do unto others what you would have them do unto you. Whenever it rises that you can step beyond that, in any way, you are adding to the collective limited ideas that hold this entire world in bondage. It's the reason why we have all of the catastrophes that we have, including the pandemic. We can say that the pandemic is caused by a virus or something else. But the fact is, we're not living up to our origin. We're made in the origin and likeness of God, the Creator. And we've been given, great masters down through the ages who have taken to task the initial idea of life and seen beyond it and said, we can't continue to live like this. Eckhart Tolle said about 4 years ago that, and this is interesting because it appears to be taking place now, or since that time, he said, the entire world will go crazy. Because this particular paradigm of ego-centered living and thinking, pursuing that which would gratify your personal limited life, your physical well-being, pursuing that can only lead to conflict and more conflict. Until in the end, we're just all at each other's throats. And so we can't just stand back and blame a bigger evil that's taking place in Ukraine. We can't blame a bigger evil. I think some of it has to do with the pharmaceutical industry that is just making money hand over fist, selling us the whole idea of disease, that you've got to be concerned and worried and fearful. And so we don't have any other recourse but to take our own personal lives and make our personal living a model that is modeled after the ideal that we're all brothers and sisters on this very tiny, fragile planet. And we have on our path, our personal path, every day we are called to honor the ideal and not be tempted to drift away, step away, or ignore this illusionary concept of life, of separation and me first and that type of thinking. So that's all we're ever sharing here, is that each individual can step away from the illusionary definition of life and step into true life and true living and find true peace, true joy, and true love. I think we're going to conclude it there.
Yeah, I just agree. I mean, we have an obligation to protect each other, but we have an opportunity to rise beyond that. And Jack, if it's okay, what I'd like to do with you is to share the Lord's Prayer in Ukrainian. So if you would allow me, permit me to do that.
Please do.
Отче наш, ти, що єси на небесах, нехай святиться ім'я Твоє, нехай прийде царство Твоє, нехай буде воля Твоя, як на небі, так і на землі. Хліб наш насущний дай нам сьогодні, і прости нам провини наші, як і ми прощаємо винуватцям нашим. І не введи нас у спокусу, але визволи нас від лукавого. Амінь. So thank you so much for your attention, and God bless you all.
Thank you, Andy. We will take an offering for Unity now, and 50% of the offering we take today will go to an organization. I've asked Andy to locate, is in touch with a number of organizations that would help the internal children who are now left without homes. They're still refugees, but they're still within Ukraine. They have no way to get on with their lives. Their homes are gone. So we're going to take half of this offering today and donate it to that cause. And I'm saying to you that are online, if you will send a check in or will you donate in any way, please say that half of my donation will go to that Ukraine benefit. And so, again, thank you. Thank you very much, Andy.
Thank you, Jack.
And let's bring to mind that financial gift we'd like to make, and let's bless it with this offering prayer. Divine love, through me, blesses and multiplies all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive, because I give. And so it is. Okay.
Man, that was so powerful. I'd like to invite us to tap into the strength of love, the love that protects sovereignty of all beings, the love that can buy charging cables or raise money to buy charging cables and send them to a place where people need them, the love that is able to say, this isn't right, and here's what I can do to protect a greater dignity.
Born
Yes.
Thank you,
Thank you
Marcy.
so much to all of you for doing what you can do in the strength of love.
In the strength of love. Okay, I'd like to just remind you that we have prayer partners over here. If you have a particular challenge you want to pray with someone about, just remain seated as everyone else files out. Our prayer partners will come up to you and take you down to our beautiful meditation room, or even just sit here with you if there's enough quiet, and share with you a prayer and some helpful thoughts. But these thoughts right here that we're singing about is really what we should carry with us into our community, into our lives today. And I want to announce that Centisha will be back at the second service, all regenerated and revived to really just open your hearts to her message. She'll be back for the second service next Sunday. Okay. All right, we're going to do Let There Be Peace on Earth. Can we do that? And that's in reference to this. Now let's feel that for the whole world. Let there be peace on earth. And is Andy still here?
Yeah.
Come on up, Andy. Join us. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth, the peace that was meant to be, with God as creator, family all are we. Let me walk with my family in perfect harmony. Let peace begin with me. Let this be the moment now. With every step I take, let this be my joyous vow. To take each moment and live each moment in peace eternally. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Yes. We have some beautiful refreshments in Fellowship Hall. You want to stick around and meet the people that are sitting next to you? Stop in Fellowship Hall. We have